Just as the IRS targeting the Tea Party scandal started breaking last year, former IRS official Lois Lerner sent out an email to her colleagues warning them to be cautious. According to the email, which was released by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, Lerner wrote, quote, "I was cautioning folks about email and how we have had several occasions where Congress has asked for emails and there has been an electronic search for responsive emails. So we need to be cautious about what we say in emails. Someone asked if OCS, instant messaging conversations, were also searchable. I don't know, but told them I would get back to them. Do you know?" Lerner's attorney has also said that she did in fact print and save some of the emails the IRS claims have been lost due to a storage server crash. Joining me now to discuss this further is David French, Senior Counsel at the American Center for Law and Justice. David, thank you very much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
So the latest we're getting from Lois Lerner is a particular anxiety about whether IMs are stored, and this comes after there was already that internal report saying, yes, targeting of the Tea Party did occur. Is this just yet again more very strong circumstantial evidence, or do you think this will actually lead to something serious?
Well, I think this is going to lead to something serious in part because the commissioner himself, Commissioner Koskinen, hinted that there was more to come here. So, you know, this was a startling revelation all on its own, but it's building on other revelations from weeks and months before. It's painting a picture of an IRS that was very, very efficient in hiding evidence, very efficient in communicating without sharing with the rest of America when called upon under the law to disclose what those communications were. The IRS has launched a long-standing campaign against the conservative movement and has been very effective in covering up a lot of that evidence, but it's beginning to break down now.
David, I worked at the CIA, and it was just understood that everything was kept and archived there. And if anyone had ever sent me an email or an instant message or anything saying, hey, be really cautious about what you're saying, red flags would have gone up across the board. We'll have said, what are you talking about? It seems to me so clear here, just the very notion that she was telling her colleagues to exercise caution. Why? What possible reason could she be saying that for, unless she's worried that one of them will say, well, I'm glad we got rid of those hard drives, because they did.
Well, in the context, the email is clear. Exercise caution. Why? Because Congress is interested. Now, there's no need for that. Congress is exercising its legal oversight capacity. There's no need to exercise caution here. There's a need to disclose. There's another thing in those emails that's very, very telling. The IRS IT person who responded to Lois Lerner said that they had the ability to save these instant messenger conversations, but they had not turned on that functionality. They had chosen not to. So here's an IRS that demands that taxpayers save every scrap of paper, every possible email, everything that has anything to do with your taxes, and then they knowingly turn off functionality on their equipment to preserve records. I mean, that's this astonishing double standard, astonishing arrogance, and we're getting news from a federal judge today that they're going to call the IRS to account for this under oath within 30 days.
For the records, the failure to keep records and possibly records discussion. By the way, there is, of course, Lois Lerner at the end of that exchange where she finds out that they didn't turn on the IM archiving, and she says, perfect, which seems to indicate a whole lot about what her state of mind is and all that. But let me ask you about this notion that she may have printed out some emails now. Her lawyer is saying that some of the emails, which we believe were destroyed, may have been printed out. How could we be finding this out now, and why?
You know, I'll believe that when I see it. So far, her lawyer has been very effective at concealing evidence. The lawyer has been very effective at keeping Lois Lerner out of jail, which is his job. I don't fault him for that. But as far as anything that he has to say, look, we'll just have to believe that when we see it. I'm also and more intrigued is what Commissioner Koskinen said, which is we've already seen some emails that you're going to be interested in. We can't wait to see those.
The U.S. Court of Appeals, if we can switch gears for a second, is going to be handing down a decision pretty soon. It's in the case of Halbig v. Burwell. Now, this deals with quite a weighty issue. It would seem to possibly deal a major blow to Obamacare. Could you just explain to everyone what's at stake? And then I want to push you a little bit on what you think the outcome is going to be. But first, give us some of the outline of why this case is even being brought.
It's a really simple case. It's kind of startling in its simplicity. The Obamacare law provides that insurance subsidies are available only for those people who've gotten insurance through a state exchange. It does not say that subsidies are available when there's no state exchange. Well, the majority of states have declined to set up their own exchange. And so this lawsuit says, well, wait a minute, why are you subsidizing millions of insurance policies without statutory authority to do so? So it's a very case based squarely on the language of the Obamacare statute itself, a language that Congress should have read more closely before they passed it. And so what's happening now is really the financial underpinning of Obamacare itself is at stake in this case.
So it seems that they had to pass it to find out what's in it, and now that they're finding out what's in it, they should have paid closer attention because it didn't allow for the federal government to set up the exchanges, to spend the money to set up these exchanges. It seems like the only way, David, that the Court of Appeals could find in favor of Obamacare here would be to say, well, we're just going to go with legislative intent, i.e. the law doesn't say what it actually says. Is that a fair reading of it? And what does that mean for other cases?
Well, you know, it's really even going beyond this notion of trying to find out legislative intent, because the legislative intent is clear from the face of the statute. This goes to the judicial philosophy of, do you interpret the law as written and apply the law as written, or do you try to interpret or apply the law as you would like it to be or believe it best functions? So what we're really talking about here is an appeal to a court to simply read the statute. There's no difficult interpretation issue here. Congress is presumed to mean what it says. It could not have been more clear. There are only subsidies through a state exchange, period.
David, right before we go, one last thing. What happens to Obamacare if the administration loses this challenge? What happens if the court comes out and says, the law says what the law says? What then?
It would be devastating to Obamacare. It would rip out the financial heart of Obamacare, and the law would have to be reopened. The president would have to go back to Congress, would have to deal with Congress. This couldn't be dealt with pen and phone. There would have to be a real legislative solution, one that would change Obamacare and transform it completely.
All right, David, thank you very much for your time. It's good seeing you.
Thank you.
We'll be back.